My goal with food plotting has really developed each year into being more concerned with every single day of the year nutrition, trying to keep deer in your property. I think one of the concerns with only focusing on the fall, which I feel like is what a lot of food plotters do, is how are you going to hold those deer and keep them on your property year round? If you're only providing something to those deer nutrition wise during the months of deer season, which is typically going to be September through January, at least in the Midwest or in most areas, how are you going to hold them the rest of the year? They're going to be able to find ag or food plots, maybe another neighbor or somebody's putting in. You need to be doing it year round. And so my goal has always been the last several years to try to have something there for them year round, whether that's mineral licks or if that's other kinds of nutrition in the spring and summer. If you can get something that is a winter feed that will last even past the winter, that as well. And it can be difficult, but it's definitely worth a try. I'll say one of the most rewarding experiences that I had this past deer season, right actually behind me here, I was sitting in a stand just a little further down here, about 100 yards away. I watched probably a dozen deer one evening out here feeding on rye and clover that we've planted. They also made their way down and stuck their head in a mineral lick over here to my left for several minutes. Then they made their way into the timber and they browsed on some native browse in there. And then they fed a little bit into the timber. They used every single thing that we have worked on here to try to make this a deer habitat. And I didn't kill a deer, but it was very rewarding to watch them benefit from that and watch them utilize that. And so I would challenge you guys and encourage you, get out there and do something in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, and as much during the year as you can. Even if it's not planting something, if it's a mineral lick or something like that that you can put in that benefits those deer as far as their health and nutrition goes, it can be a huge advantage to keeping them near or on your property year round. And then you're not going to have to try to attract them or draw them in as much when deer season actually comes around. So with that said, my overall strategy for this year is once again trying to have that base of a clover about everywhere. If you're not utilizing clover in your food plot, you're definitely missing out, because clover can obviously be a great spring and summer crop. It'll last into the fall, and I've seen clover here that maybe it dwindles down a little bit, but it stays green all the way down to even 20 degrees at times. So clover is a year-round benefit, all season benefit that you can have for your deer population. And I think you definitely need that as a staple. So I've got some areas I'm going to put an annual clover this year and a perennial clover. I've talked about that in a frost seeding video that I did. I'm going to be putting a screening in once again that I've done for the last few years with from Grandpa Ray Outdoors called Fortress. It's got Egyptian wheat, which is a really popular screen that a lot of food plotters are using now. But in addition to that, it's got pearl millet and then two kinds of sorghum or milo that help give it some standability and some toughness to be able to be there for several months. And I usually plant it the first week of June or the first week of May. Going to focus on doing it the first week of June this year again, and it will last all the way into the end of deer season, all the way into January. It provides you a good screening. Now, one thing I noticed last year, and this is probably because of the drought we had last year, I didn't have as much forage for the deer throughout the deer season. They were really venturing into that screening and into the milo and into the Egyptian wheat, and they'd spend time browsing in there, probably because there wasn't anything else to eat or not as much else to eat. I had a good crop of winter rye come up in the fall that we put out in September that did well and was really attractive. So what I'm doing this year is everywhere I'm putting screening or putting like a milo blend, there's another blend that I'm using called Deer and Bird that has milo and soybeans and sunflowers and buckwheat in it. And what I'm going to do with each one of those is after they come up and germinate and they've grown for 3 to 4 to 6 weeks, something like that, depending on how well they do, I'm going to come back and overseed some 3-way annual clover into those. And that is going to give me some more forage for them if they do venture out into that screening. There may be some clover down there at the bottom of the screening that they might want to feed in too. So just another benefit there for the deer and another bit of attraction. And also with your annual clovers, if you plant those in the fall, which I'm planning to have enough of it that I can broadcast it over the fall if I use like a rye and a wheat again during the fall, just some to kind of save some plots or spots that may be bare. I'm going to put 3-way annual clover in with those too, because there's not going to grow enough that it's going to put a head on and it's going to die. It'll probably grow just enough that it'll get a decent height or growth to it, maybe 4 to 6 inches, something like that. And then that will give those deer something to have, an additional forage to have in the fall, but it's also going to come back for you the next spring and give you some cover crop of a clover. It'll give you some nutrition, some attraction to keep those deer on your property year round. So that's kind of what my whole goal is going to be this year. And then once we get closer to fall, I've got some fall blends with some brassicas and things like that that I'm going to use. I'll talk about those in a different video here in the future. But that's what the goal is for this year as far as strategy goes. And in some of these bigger fields, I'm going to have half of it in a clover, real heavy in clover, and the other half that you're looking at right behind me, we're going to have to do some work to that soil, possibly with a subsoiler or just a disc to get that ground broke up, because it's gotten very compacted and hard over the last couple of years. We used to have a pretty good stand of things in it, forages in it, and then the last couple of years it just hasn't done very well. A lot of sun hits it there. It's become kind of sandy and crusty there. So I've spread gypsum over all of this just a couple months ago, hoping that's going to help with some of that compaction, but we'll have to do some work on that. But what I'm going to do with that is put the deer and bird blend there. So the milo and the soybeans and buckwheat and sunflowers included in that. And then all the way down through the strip here in our walkway, I'm planning to plant that there too, and fertilize all that properly to hopefully get as good of a yield as possible. So it's always a grand plan that you can make out to hopefully have success. And sometimes it doesn't always work out, but I think having a plan and having a goal is definitely an important thing to try to have as much success with your food plot as you can, attract as many deer as you can, benefit as many deer as you can, and hopefully harvest a few deer if you're able to. Thank you for watching Farming for Whitetails. We'll see you next time.